Confessions of a Black Geek. Oleg Bemisola Rude Perkovich. In high school, my friends and I owned two words. We were black and we were geeks. We had the soundtrack to prove the first. Classic Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin renditions of Young, Gifted, and Black. That song was as much a part of my regular diet as the lumpy and not sweet enough porridge I had for breakfast many mornings. My mom was an excellence for Black children mother, which meant that she battled for parents of a high achiever supremacy at monthly meetings, and was quick to whip out the dashiki and boombox so that I could dance interpretively alongside my equally gifted and well-mothered friends at the annual Martin Luther King Jr. breakfasts. We were on display at family gatherings, too. Some evil auntie or uncle got the idea to have the young people perform every Thanksgiving before dinner. If we did not slouch to the center of the living room to recite a Little Langston Hughes or perform a painful excerpt from our last piano recital, we could forget about eating. My cousins and I grumbled and threatened revolt, but miss out on more codfish cakes and mac and cheese? We performed. But let's be honest, my friends and I didn't need that much prodding to put excellence on display, especially the academic variety. We were serious geeks. Second proof, we voluntarily joined and were the only members of the math and debate teams. We brought all of our textbooks home daily just in case, in book bags the size of igloos. Kay and I would call each other breathlessly on report card day to tally our A's and A pluses. It was understood that the occasional B was too devastating to discuss. We took such excessive pride in our academic achievements that when Kay received an A instead of an A plus with a 98 average, we hurried to Mrs. H to rectify this grievous error, with me along as his consigliere. Maybe Mrs. H had gotten confused. No, the A would stand. Because you're pompous, she told us. Okay, so Mrs. H wasn't confused, but clearly she needed a sabbatical. Looking back, though, Mrs. H might have been onto something. Kay and I were certain that our all-around fabulosity knew no bounds, and certainly not racial ones. Our high school was an oasis of suburban racial integration. These were the 80s. Ebony and Ivory, Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney's pop hit of the era, could have been our school song. Jerry curled and sun-end hairstyles were equally welcome at the best parties. Our school put on The Wiz with a multiracial cast. And when we did The Crucible, the drama coach was sensitive enough to ask the Black members of the troupe if we'd be uncomfortable playing the role of slave Tituba. Yeah, I murmured, imagining my mother's face if I dared to come home saying, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to play the slave in the school play. Invite the whole family." She would have thought I lost my mind. Still, I was secure enough in my two-word identity to wear different personas, like the rubber bracelets that snaked up my arms. In playwriting workshop, I explored my younger days of dancing on the bed with a blonde towel on my head in a thoughtful piece. After school, I giggled through the mall talking like a valley girl with friends of every shape, size, and hue. We were like piano keys, melodious and harmonic, dancing to the same beat of mutual respect. We acknowledged the chocolate and peanut butter perfection of Aerosmith and Run DMC on Walk This Way. Smurf was both TV noun and dance party verb, and Prince versus Michael Jackson stumped us all. Just when Thriller and the Moonwalk took our collective breath away, Purple Rain stormed in, wearing high-heeled boots and rolling pop, rock, heavy metal, and R&B into a glorious ball of awesome. Black and white. We all love the spare beats and synthesizers of 80s music. And the hair? Have you seen the hair? Seriously, Google it. I'll wait. So, of course, my friends and I were sure our white classmates weren't racist. Racists were red-faced people wearing white sheets. They were not sitting next to us in AP English or competing with us for the individual research projects and science award. We giggled and got good grades alongside one another. We were on the honor roll together, and we collectively celebrated the rise of hip hop and blue-eyed soul. But surface harmony notwithstanding, there were cracks in the veneer. When I proudly displayed one of Keith Haring's giant Free South Africa posters in my room, a friend came to visit and went white with outrage. Pun intended. That poster seems like it's saying the black people should rise up and crush white people, he said. They should really try talking to them first. Of course. The nearly 50 years of resistance to the government system of apartheid could not have possibly included some talking. Even the music we shared started to feel a bit offbeat. As much as I admired the philanthropic sentiment, some of the lyrics in Do They Know It's Christmas, the star-studded musical call for famine relief in Ethiopia, made me squirm. At school assemblies, the whole student body rapped and sang along to Caravan of Love and King Holiday. But the ugliness of Howard Beach, where a group of black men were chased by a mob of white men through the streets of New York City and severely beaten, was only minutes away. My visits to the school library stopped after I'd asked the librarian where I might find resources for my research paper on Zora Neale Hurston, and she told me there was no such person. Okay. Whatever, I had work to do. I was getting ready to move on to college, where surely more enlightened adults waited to affirm my brilliance. Pompous. That's right. Then the school newspaper published a cartoon featuring black teens speaking ebonically. That's nasty. My friends and I, also on the newspaper staff, were not amused. Accompanying the cartoon was an op-ed of sorts decrying black behavior at parties, and black students drafted and signed a petition condemning the piece. We were at first buoyed by the number of student allies who immediately expressed their support. But things got sticky when those allies wanted to add their names to the petition, and we held fast to the notion that a petition from we, the black students, should be signed by, well, the black students. It went back and forth. Feelings were hurt. We held our ground, suggesting that sympathetic parties start another petition. Add a rainbow coalition of outrage to the voices of protest. That didn't go over so well. We were called reverse racists. The principal called me into her office and gently asked that as student body president, I lead the charge to amend the petition so that white students could sign it. I declined politely. Later that day, the newspaper advisor explained to me and a friend that it was one big misunderstanding and had not been done to offend, and oh so helpfully added that in her day, minstrel shows were legitimate entertainment. The newspaper editors, genuinely chagrined, issued an apology, and life went on. Or so it seemed. After the school newspaper incident, my friends and I were no longer at ease. But the discomfort was muted by the empowerment lessons imparted by our parents and people like Miss B, who shared both Oprah and Okonkwo of Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart fame with us in African history class. There was Ms. Z, who had the vision and authority to nudge us into extracurricular black theater. I played Mama in A Raisin in the Sun. My chagrin at having to play an old lady with padding, barely mitigated by the fact that I'd gotten a lead role. And yes, we revisited the dashiki days to dance interpretively to Claude McKay's poem, White Houses, in front of the entire school. We were frequently mortified, but more often filled with confidence and pride. We took pride in knowing our roots and how to dramatize them. And since my friends and I were a competitive group in a competitive class, the A-pluses flowed. We envisioned ourselves easing on down the road to a top-tier college future. I had a pretty good portfolio of college material that could open doors at a variety of hallowed halls named after rich dead guys. Here I was. Honor roll. Check. Good SAT scores. Check. More activities than I actually had time for. Check. I once calculated my after-school commitments and the time that each needed, and it came out to just under 66 hours a week. And that was before I counted weekends. Let the record show that I was undeterred. As a reader of both science fiction and fantasy, I figured it was only a matter of time before I uncovered the secrets of time travel, transmogrification, and magic wardrobes that would allow me to do it all. Looking at the me on paper, how could I not expect to be a desirable candidate in the world of higher learning? And then I signed up for my first and only college prep meeting with my guidance counselor. He took one look at my list: Northwestern, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell, and SUNY Binghamton, and smiled a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes as he said, "These schools are kind of a reach for you." A reach? For me? I was a certified, bona fide, flag-waving geek. I assumed it was generally accepted common knowledge. Giving him his smile right back, I left the office feeling a little sad for this man who so obviously didn't know whom he was dealing with. Growing up with Maya Angelou and Malcolm X, Sweet Honey in the Rock, Black History Month every month of the year in my home, and a rainbow coalition of friends and family meant that I knew who I was. I knew who Zora Neale Hurston was, too, and where I should apply to college. I waited for the acceptance letters to roll in, and they did. For all of us. We wore our status like the alligators emblazoned on our shirts. We were academic superstars, remember? Apparently not everyone did. At least not many of our counterparts remembered that we were the same people who sat next to them in AP classes, occasionally gave homework help, and assisted in decoding the poetic genius of hip-hop's pioneers. When the news spread about our acceptances, all of that didn't matter anymore. We lost one of our labels just like that. Suddenly, we were no longer part of the school's elite geekerati. We were only very, very black. "It's just so wrong," sputtered my Don't Free South Africa acquaintance on the phone, who was now more well-versed in the nature of injustice. "It's not fair. Someone like E, who's worked so hard and is so smart, gets rejected from Harvard, but all of these black people get into Ivy League schools." "Excuse me? People like me, you mean?" I said sweetly, ever polite. My mom taught me manners, even in the face of extreme jackass-ishness. There followed much stammering and blustering, and assurances that, of course, he hadn't meant me. I realized then and there that the same people who'd asked for my notes were always going to see me as more C- than A+. No matter what the report card said or how good my notes were. And their parents, grumbling about affirmative action and lowered standards in the same breath, probably fed them those thoughts at the dinner table. And some of the wonderful teachers who quietly but fiercely looked out for us let us know that some of their colleagues felt that way too. It broke my heart. I thought I knew the face of racism. In second grade, a classmate who knew a lot of bad words and very little about personal space followed me daily murmuring, "Nigger, nigger, nigger," in my ear. Yeah, that was a year to remember. And then there was the way our community welcomed an interracial couple with a cross burning. Thankfully, a number of neighbors had led a march and vigil in objection to that heartbreaking display of ignorance. Now I looked around our school and wondered, are you like those cross-burning, epithet-spitting people? My teachers and classmates knew me, and still the answer to my question wasn't clear. It broke my heart. But it didn't take long to open my eyes and see the truth. It was their problem. If they didn't get it, well, that was too bad. I wasn't going to try talking to them first. I'd gotten into the colleges of my choice because I'd worked every multi-dimensional bone in my body to get there. I didn't need to be in AP Bio to know how wrong it is to be reduced and flattened to a color. but I was. I waved my identity flag high and wide, marching band style. Yep, did that too. Polyester uniform and all. I'm black. I'm a geek. And nobody can divide that beautiful partnership.